Hey Internet, Orc speaking. When a game of Valorant starts, you will begin on either the attacking side or the defending side. The attacker's objective is to get the spike to one of the usually 2 bomb sites, plant it, and detonate it. And once the bomb explodes, you'll win a point, regardless if anyone is still alive. Now that may seem simple, which it is, so let's move on to the not so simple part, using the most basic strategies to help you and your team get onto a site. The first strategy every player learns is the full send, also known as the 5-man rush. As you probably could have guessed, this is when all 5 members Leroy Jenkins to a single point, either overrunning defense, like a football team, or getting mowed down trying. There is not much to comment on this, because most of the nuance of what makes a good 5-man rush work is using good utility. So making sure that your smokes and flashes are out with good timing, your entries dash in, get kills, and your initiators come by and flush out the corners, which if you do not have a 5-stack can be a little tricky to do. Now after getting mowed down by a judge-wielding maniac, the team decides on a more strategic and slower attack. The split push is similar to the 5-man rush, but instead of all 5 players coming from one angle, you'll split into 2 groups and pinch the site. Now for some sites, this will require you to gain some mid-control, but that's a small price to pay to have 2 entrances instead of 1. The split push is the default push that you'll be utilizing in most games. It gives you a little bit more time to set up compared to the 5-man rush, but you also need to be a little bit more considerate since you're spreading your team a little thinner. Next is a friend of mine's favorite strategy, also known as the default. A default is when your team spreads out completely and every man plays for himself, trying to find a way in. If doing a 5-man rush is like having a battering ram on the front door, defaulting is like having 5 ninjas scanning the wall for that one loose brick that they could kick in. Defaulting works best when you are either the smarter or the better shot compared to your opponents, since a lot of engagements in defaulting tends to be 1v1s. And don't worry if you can't outsmart your opponent or you're just not a good shot that day. All it takes for a default to work is that one teammate getting that one important pick. Next is the fake. By showing some presence on one bomb site, you could shaft all the defenders to rotate, and then your team will just sneak over to the other site. Faking should be done once you've conditioned your opponents to believe that you only always hit a site. But as you get to a higher level, players are less likely to be fooled and play more patiently. So even after a fake, you will often have to fight a few anchoring players. On the other side of the fake is the rehit. Instead of faking a site and trekking back to the other, wait a bit, don't make noise, then hit the bomb site that you faked. You are trying to make your opponents overthink the situation by tricking them into thinking that they may have over-rotated. The one downside to this, again, is at a higher level, your opponents would try to push out and find your team, also known as making space. And even if they're not that aggressive, oftentimes they'll go back to a default defense formation. Part of what makes a good fake is its believability. Convince your opponents that you are doing something when you are not, and at the same time do something that they don't expect. There's a lot more to playing attack than I could shove into a couple-minute long video, but the idea is to stay unpredictable. The final strategy is known as the lurk, which I like to think more of as a modifier instead of its own separate strategy. A lurker is someone who plays by himself separate from the team, and a lurker can be applied to the strategies I already mentioned. So for instance, a 5-man hit would just become a 4-man hit with a lurker. A lurker's main goal is to create space and find out where the opponents are, kind of like a spy. And if a team is able to hit a site, the lurker will, oftentimes, play a weird, unexpected angle that nets him a lot of free kills. Playing a lurk role can be done by any character, but in an older meta was oftentimes done with the Sentinel, since they're not very useful for hitting a site and are a lot better at holding and covering a lot of ground. However, ever since Chamber was added to the game, he was also very useful for being an opper, which is like the main point of entry. So oftentimes the lurk comes down to whoever wants to do it or whoever is not mandatory for pushing a site. Lastly, don't be afraid to bail on your pre-round strategy. If you lose a member early or find a strong defense you weren't expecting, comment on it, let your team know, and rotate. You have to be fluid when attacking, taking into account what characters are where, what map it is, how much time you have, whether the bomb planter has been killed, and being able to absorb all of that information and then make a decision takes time, and also a very different tutorial, which I'll be sure to make if I'm not too lazy. After all, this is a Valorant 101 video. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or insightful, please do the YouTube stuff, comment, like, and subscribe. It helps this channel out a ton. And thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.